So hi everyone, thanks for joining us for the panel discussion, How to Set Up a Govtech Program. Throughout the discussion today, we'll aim to cover the main takeaways and learnings from Govtech programs from Scotland, Australia, and Poland. And joining us today are three distinguished guests and experts. So we have Justyna Orlowska, Director of Govtech Polska and Prime Minister's High Representative for Government Technology.
Hello.
We have Andrew Niere, Public Sector Innovation Manager at Department of Premier and Cabinet of Victoria, Australia. And we have Mark Elliott, Program Director at CivTech Scotland.
Hi there.
So let's start with how your teams and programs begun. And Justyna, could you tell us how did you decide that the Govtech team is what's needed for the Polish government, and what was your motivation behind setting up such team?
Thank you, Arune. Thank you for a warm introduction. Already it's 3 years ago, and I am so happy to be here and still having Govtech. So it turned out that it is possible and it is safe for government and for all the public servants to run Govtech. And because at the beginning, all the time I was asked, Justyna, you wanted to do procurement for startups, really? And it was like the most repeatable question at the beginning. And with what we started? We started with hackathons. So it was back in Ministry of Finance, because our boss used to be the Minister of Finance and Economic Development, and his main goal was to tackle the problem of VAT frauds. That is why if you hear frauds, then you can think about at the moment about data. A lot of data that you need to gather, you need to analyze, and then you think about data scientists and startups that can do that. And the first thing we made up with was, we are the Ministry of Finance, so it's difficult to touch the topic of procurement because we are not responsible for that. But we can do easily run hackathons like other institutions, either public or private. That is why we started. We have organized hackathon, and it turned out that only during 24 hours, those programmers that were attending this hackathon brought to the public sector 80 drop of VAT fraud because of their solution, because of their idea. Of course, there was a need to further go into this solution and to expand it. But those ideas that appeared during only 24-hour hackathon brought to the public sector such great results. And it was a pure of luck, we can say, because our boss was promoted to the prime minister, and because of that, we started thinking about something more horizontal and more, and then we were enough lucky to touch procurement. And that is why we started. It was already in 2018. And after half a year attending to the public procurement office, we managed to get interpretation of the law in the public procurement directive, European directive, that it turned out to be there from 2004, but nobody in Europe touched this in the direction of IT and technology, because it was written that it is especially good for architecture. So if it is especially good, then for nothing else. And that is why we got this interpretation that, okay, if it is good for in architecture, so also it can be good for IT, technology, software, which is also which involves also our sort of architecture. And it is a contest design which we are promoting in our public sector. And but it was, like I said, 2018, and today we have 2020. So now we are more like, of course, we do have this this department for contest design, but also we are, as we can say, inside government consulting tech company. But or startup, still we are not so big, but already we have more than 2 years, so maybe not. So we are we run consultancy for other ministries, other public sector organizations, also for municipalities and local governments if they approached us to help them to implement innovation, to implement technology. If the result of the consultancy is, for example, we run contest design, then we are till the end with them. Like we are also supporting running this contest designs. But sometimes it can be anything. We can, for example, show them the already existing solution, already existing startups, and already it is our success that we were able to help them, to inform them, to inspire them that it is possible solution to their challenge, their problem.
Thanks, Justyna. That's very extensive overview of how you started and actually how much you grew over the last 2 years. And we'll come back to the specifics around where the Govtech team could sit and what kind of function this could do. But Mark, you were one of the first ones, I think, in Europe and in the world as well to kind of set up the what you call a CIFTech program. Could you tell us a bit more as well how you started? How this idea came to your team's head and how it was developed?
Yeah, well, to start off with, it wasn't a team at all. We were a group of disparate individuals who were coming up with the same kind of riff, the same kind of idea. And I'm going back to 2014. Formally, we started looking at it in 2015. I came up to Scotland in about 2014, having run a very successful regeneration project down in England, where we'd done the first ever genuine tech accelerator based on the Silicon Valley model back in 2009 when accelerators were really young. And I came up wondering and just almost by the by, I was wondering why was it that the biggest sector in the world had not adopted the systems that had disrupted just about everything else, and disrupted it, and adopted it for good, hopefully. But at the same time, other people were thinking other things. That people were asking, is the procurement system that we use fit for this modern, tech world? And I think that echoes something that Justyna was saying. And then at the same time, we were asking ourselves, and we got together because there was sort of the common group of people. We kind of knew each other from the past, and we started saying that actually the essential problem is, how do you procure what you don't know exists? And the whole procurement system, certainly in the UK, is all about discovering a problem, putting a solution together, and then going and getting somebody to quote on it. And of course, the problem with that is that you're quite often not expert in the area you're trying to find a solution for. And it seemed kind of mad that, say maybe even 10 people in a room would come up with a solution when in fact you've got 6 million people in Scotland who might be able to come up with a better one. So how would we be able to open it up? And then the final bit of it was, there's an ambition by the Scottish government to get SMEs far more engaged in public procurement, and public procurement is can be a really difficult one for an SME. And I come from the SME world, so I kind of know that territory really well. And it was a confluence of those things that we said, okay, maybe we could put all these together in some kind of process, this pipeline that we now call the innovation flow. And that's how it came about. It was a group of like-minded people who came together, realized there was an opportunity, and it was an experiment. And the first time we started, the first statement we said is, most of this is going to fail, and that, as in the nature of true innovation. The truth of the matter is it didn't fail, and here we are, 4 innovation flows and the 5th one going through at the moment. That's my answer to how we started.
That's all sounds very exciting, and looking back now, it kind of seems, very rational. Of course, this is what we need to do, but I guess, at that time when you don't really have a lot of examples elsewhere, how did you convince, and was there how much convincing there had to be done to the stakeholders? Because it's still, you still need to convince someone to kind of set this up in the public sector.
Okay, so it took over 6 months to get the first 6 challenges through. And that was with just 3 what we call challenge sponsors, public sector organizations that have problems they'd like solved. We call them challenge sponsors. And we only got 3. But as it happens, they had two challenges each. So we ended up with 6 to start off with. 6 months. We did 10, and we could have put 12 into this latest CivTech 5. We did that in 6 weeks. So yeah, I have some really dogged and determined colleagues, people like Alexander Holt, who just didn't take no for an answer, basically. It was just really hard work. But then most sales and marketing at a startup is really hard work. So we were expecting it. It was just hard work and finding. I think Alexander and Rui, who was with him at the time, did something like 300 meetings with various potential challenge sponsors before they find the 3 that would go for it. And then you show people that it works, and maybe they come on board a bit quicker.
And I guess with every new then this kind of team, it makes it slightly easier for them because you already have some evidence. Like for us, at least, that was definitely easier when we had both Scotland and Polish examples to kind of prove our case to our government. And Andrew, as if I remember correctly, we heard that when you were setting up the team, the CivTech team was kind of taken a lot as an example, and you learned a lot from the CivTech team. Could you tell us how you started, and then what were kind of the main arguments to put forward such a program in Australia?
I guess we were pretty lucky because our minister, who had carriage for public sector reform, went on a European trip and ended up in CivTech's office in Edinburgh. And it was through a kind of visit where he travelled around Europe and sort of came back and said, look, we're doing most things that everyone else is doing. There's this one thing that I really liked and it stood out. Let's get in touch with them. And I think a short time later, Alexander Holt was on his way to Melbourne, and I think he was on his way to Sydney, and I shoehorned him to come down to Melbourne, and we got together and had a few conversations, and before we knew it, we were setting up a version of CivTech in Victoria. We sort of had an easy run though, because we had a lot of history of running public sector innovation funds, and these kind of tech innovation funds, which got small to medium enterprises and other organisations, research organisations, universities, not-for-profits. We had a lot of kind of experience in giving people grants to kind of do this work. Then, quite fortunately, we just come off another collaboration with Nesta, the UK's Innovation Foundation, around, I guess, the kind of mindset you needed for public sector problem solving, and this kind of holding a problem mindset. And that conversation, combined with some work the government had done around the kind of inadequacies of procurement, which Justyna touched on, especially around things that don't exist in the market, so pre-commercial or innovation procurement. It was just a perfect storm for us to set up the Civic Labs initiative. And we had a very kind of passionate partner in an organisation called Launch Vic, which is Victoria's startup body. So Melbourne and Victoria has a really vibrant startup community. So we took a bit of a focus on bringing startups into the program and addressing this mismatch in startups and government not being able to procure. So, it was through that sort of combination of factors that led us to where we are, and we're in the midst of our third iteration right now. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Could you tell a bit more how the labs work, like how the program is set up, just a bit more around that kind of the way that you do things?
Yeah, it's not dissimilar to CivTech. We spend a lot of time working with government departments and agencies to find problems that solutions don't exist for, or that they've tried solutions and they're not happy with the results. And we're really trying to leverage the domain expertise of the public servants and their knowledge around that domain, and then leverage the ingenuity and tech know-how of the startups to come together, and for both parties to kind of play to their strengths. So we spend time looking for opportunities, looking for challenges that are relevant not only to our government, but to governments more broadly, because then that provides a kind of an opportunity for someone to build a business around a solution for that problem. And we work experimentally and quite extensively. We sort of break some of the procurement models. We do a lot of face-to-face engagement around talking to people when it comes to selecting who we're going to work with. We use the funnel approach, where we're really testing the capacity of both organisations to work together before we move them down through the program and towards that ultimate procurement solution. So yeah, I mean, classic elements, sort of a lean approach, lots of elements of co-design. What we find is that, and I'm sure my colleagues would find this as well, we're working on areas around public impact. We're working to change the lives of people. And what you find is that government and a startup or an SME, they both have this desire to create an impact. So it's a wonderful relationship where both organisations are driven by a shared outcome. And that's probably what separates it from a lot of other procurement approaches. Yes, the startup is focusing on their own sustainability and longevity, but first and foremost, they're really focused on creating an impact. And I think they're often surprised that their government stakeholders are as impassioned and as kind of driven by getting a result. So to put both of these kind of organisations together and get them to understand and walk in each other's shoes, it's a really powerful model for creating an exciting impact and outcome, and often, far more cost effectively than if we can think about the way we typically approach procurement.
Yeah, I think a lot of times some startups wouldn't even consider maybe government and that kind of as a market, and some see it as a kind of choice between like making an impact or kind of having your business and having for-profit business. And this kind of gives them an opportunity to find an area where they both can have that very, very positive impact while actually having a profitable business. And I'd like to move a bit more into, the specific setup of the team, because, well, I mean, for us, at least when we're setting it up, one of the most interesting things were actually like, where in the government would you even put this kind of team? So I'd like to start with Justyna. You work at the kind of the central government level, and could you tell us, what's the setup? Why did you decide it? I mean, that for you, I guess that kind of was because you were working there, and that's where that opportunity came with. But what do you see as kind of the main benefits of being at that like very high level? But also, what do you see maybe are missing, or what if you're like more at the implementing agencies? What could those agencies can do better? So just kind of exploration of for the bureaucrats listening to us who need to then write the legal paper where it should actually sit. What should they think about?
So for sure, it depends on from country to country. It differs because, for example, in the UK we have they have departments, not ministries. It's a little bit different structure of government of central government. So the first thing you need to do is to check it out where you will be heard. Where in the government it will be at the most crucial part. Why I say most crucial part? Because it is like in the private sector. When it comes to innovation, you are going to implement innovation and changes, then it is crucial to be at the top, at the board of next to the board of directors, it can be department, it can be a person in the board of directors. That is, and for example, we can see here. Okay, so maybe it is one of the ministers. I don't know, but it's like you need to check it out in your own place. In Poland, we do have the prime minister who is is crazy about innovation and new technologies and startups. So he is the patron. It is under his patronage, this program. But at the operational level, it is department, and also we do have some structures, formal structures that are intersectional. We do have a committee, which is and there it is also prime minister, which is inter-ministerial body. And so there is no easy answer. Like, you need to verify, you need to check it out in your own country, in your own municipality, because also you can run, we can see Mark and I met Alex in 2018, and also maybe off topic, but it is crucial to inspire each other. Like, it is because it is good to be the first, but then the first Alex was Alex and his team. Their role was to teach others and to tell their lessons learned to others. And also we were the team who were opened and lucky to listen this lessons learned. We do have a little bit different methodology, but it doesn't matter because the problems are the same, and those challenges that we share in the world. And we do have also Andrew, who is from Australia, and it turned out that not only in Europe we do have these problems, challenges, but also in Australia, and I am sure that in other countries too. And in order to have more easier way to run Govtech, it is crucial to identify where is the best to be heard as a Govtech, and to put the highest priority for Govtech. And in Poland, it's turned out to be the chancellor of the prime minister, and so far so good, because we are heard, and we, from this place, we can inspire other ministries, other local governments, municipalities to run innovation in their own departments and places.
Yeah, I guess the inspiration bit is definitely very, very important. For us, that was also a key, and kind of just having a conversations like these as well, and sharing the kind of all the lessons. I think a lot of people just go through that, setting up the teams, go through similar things, and that really inspires. And Mark, where was it easy for you to find that kind of stakeholder or an organization that could listen to what you were saying, and could take that on and amplify the Civ Tech?
Yeah, before I will answer that, but before, Justyna made me smile because she was talking about inspiration and things like that, and it's quite lonely being out there as the only one. And people were saying to us at one point, why is no one else doing this? And of course, now everybody's saying to us, why is everybody doing it? It's quite a bizarre thing. But I do remember when Andrew turned up, and I think Andrew was the first person who came to visit us in a really serious manner. And he left, and Alexander turned around to me and said, what does that teach us? I said, it teaches us we're not barking, we're not mad. Somebody else actually recognized what we were doing and liked the idea. But we were naturally placed. I mean, Justyna, by the way, everything Justyna said is absolutely spot on as far as I'm concerned. And you do have to find where you sit. We fell into the digital directorate because that's where Alexander was working at the time, and that's where the then deputy director and now director of the digital directorate had latched on to this idea, and he'd heard me speak at something, and we all got together. So it's a natural place, but it's also the right place within the Scottish government in the sense that while the digital directorate does sort of vertical stuff, it's very much a T-shaped organisation. We go right across Scottish government, and there is debate. There is debate inside the Scottish government as to whether we should be in economic, in terms of economic growth. My view is it really doesn't matter. We're going to be doing the same whatever we do. We are definitely part of government, and it gives us huge credibility with the 160 or so public sector organisations we have in Scotland. But I think we got lucky because certainly in the early days, and it's still true now, very large part of the team, and it's still a very small team. We're less than 10 people as the core team. Over half of them got private sector experience as well. I'm profoundly private sector. Alexander has had many years in the private sector. And I think it's that combination that means we can talk with authority and credibility to both markets, for want of a better phrase. And I think that was really important for us. I think, but going back to being cited within government, it's hugely beneficial. It is, despite what many people would think, a very good brand in Scotland. Scotland's got a lot of, it's quite a sort of interesting political environment, which I need to be careful about what I say because I'm a Scottish government employee, but so I have to be careful. But it is an interesting environment to work in, and it is a brand that is recognised in Scotland and generally recognised by the population of Scotland as being something that is a positive one. So it's a good place for us to be. Sometimes it can drive you mad in terms of large organisations, be they private sector or public sector, do move slowly at times. But actually, if I look back at the last 5 years, I think to myself, could we have moved any faster? Probably not.
And how do you see, I mean, you still have that kind of separateness in a way, because you are based within the start the building, and you have your kind of different space that's not just kind of a department building. And I think what do you see that why you still wanted to have that kind of separateness and a bit of an identity? What do you think that gives to the ecosystem?
So I need to be really clear about this, is that while we're not separate, we're part of a division inside the directorate, and we feel very strongly we are. And we work across those things and across the Scottish government. So we're not separate to government. But what we had to do as government is to reach out to the audiences we needed to reach out to. Now, in some ways, we made procurement easier for SMEs. We have a really ridiculously simple application process, for example. But the other thing is we had to make a statement. We had to make a statement about where we lodged ourselves. And in Scotland, there was one preeminent tech hub, if you like, tech building, and at the time it was the fastest growing one in Europe. It can't grow any more, so it can't be the fastest growing one in Europe. And we made great play on being in that building, and a lot of people criticize governments for not getting things. The Scottish government got what we were saying. And they said, okay, write the business case, justify going into the building. And we've never had a problem about being in that building. And just by showing people what that does, generates enthusiasm. I think one of the things that, if you're going to make a successful Govtech program, you got to show people. We started very small and showed people, and then grew and grew and grew. And I think that's really important. You've got to show, and you've got to go out there. And it's not about meeting people halfway. It's about meeting people. I hate that phrase, meeting people halfway. It's, you know, you got to go out there and be part of that community. And that's what we did by taking CivTech and sitting it in a private sector building.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of shows, especially for startups who are not very much aware of how the government looks, and that looks like a scary big thing that they don't understand. That shows that, you know, we're part of the same society, we're part of the same ecosystem.
Do this lot look like government people? I mean, what does a government person look like? You know, we are human beings. We're all human beings.
Exactly. And Andrew, could you expand a bit more about the configuration of your team? Like, is it like, are you just a few different people from different agencies? Because you told that you cooperate a lot with Launchpad and other kind of more startup oriented agencies. Could you tell a bit more about your setup?
Yeah, I guess we really have a kind of partnership, like a hybrid model. So I'm predominantly the one with the Department of Premier and Cabinet brand sourcing the challenges inside government and providing that sort of central agency department kind of awareness and support of the government partners. But LaunchVic is both a government initiative and a sort of an external organisation. So it's framed as being separate to government whilst sort of being centrally funded. So we've got this kind of wonderful hybrid of kind of capital G government when we need it, but also the flexibility and the agility of being a more agile organisation when we're sort of got our Civic Labs brand on. And we all have private sector experience as well. So, you know, I think you need both of those things. You need people that understand what the journey is like, whether it's been an entrepreneurial journey or not, just even that sort of what it is to start and run a business. And I think, you know, this, we can use the brand to go both ways. So when it needs to look like a trusted place for government to come and explore their opportunities, we're there, we're speaking their language. You know, we've got, you know, these initiatives rely a lot on relationship building. So, you know, we're using our networks inside government already to kind of source those opportunities and to support the colleagues that are bringing themselves into the initiative, as well as then reaching out through the kind of economic development side. So we've got this, you know, dual purpose program that's solving public problems, but building kind of economic development as well. So we have to have feelers into both worlds. And I think, you know, you wouldn't want to run this sort of agnostic to one of those parties. You've really got to be open to you know, to addressing both of these worlds. It doesn't matter where you sort of put it, as long as you're kind of setting it up with the right people that know how to kind of reach out and commune in these different spaces.
Yeah,
we're pretty well though. We're only 4.5 people, so it's a lot of work for a small team.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think what you were all saying is that kind of having that you know, knowledge and understanding of both worlds, and then having a role not as a kind of a closed team that just has its knowledge and, you know, does its thing, but the one that kind of builds all the relationships and connects those people. And like, I think what we're talking about, inspiring each other to create this, but it's also just inspiring our colleagues in different departments to kind of get like understand innovation and become those kind of sponsors and the speakers for innovation for you. I see, Mark, you unmuted yourself. So.
Yeah, well, I just want to pick up on you know what we've been talking about, which is that many years ago, when I was at the regeneration project in the northeast of England, we did an analysis of business support, and we found that, quite to our surprise, actually, that the best business support was coming from the public sector, and the private sector support tended to be a bit threadbare, for want of a better word, a little bit cost cutting, if you like. And I think one of the great advantages of being in government or having your core team inside government is that you've got time to develop, and you're not looking at the bottom line straight away, and that they have, by and large, you know, a longer time span to look at things than, say, a private sector organization. But Andrew is so spot on. You know, it really doesn't matter where you sit. You've got to be able to talk to both sides, and I think the way we do it, and I think the other, you know, Justyna and Andrew's systems are they similar, is that one of the biggest problems in Silicon Valley or in tech is this product market fit. And almost automatically, if you're solving a problem for a public sector organization, you've probably got that product market fit before you even start off on the journey. So you know, there's some really interesting, getting these two to mesh together and work really well. It is a really good way of doing things.
And where do you see, I mean, you've been working on the similar concept for quite a while. Do you see that like kind of changing in terms of, you know, the maturity of GovTech, especially in Europe? Do you see like your team changing, like doing any like other kind of things, shifting direction, or you see that's kind of, you know, where you think you should need to kind of perfect the model more and just like do, you know, again, the innovation flows?
Both. So we've got a business case in at the moment. We're talking about the next 4 years. We're talking about, there's real enthusiasm here about scaling us massively. But also we're saying, actually, we need to expand the system, explore new areas. We know for sure that we want to extend, you know, again, I'm going to use this phrase, the Silicon Valley playbook into the post-accelerator phase. We know for sure that we want to handle bigger and smaller challenges. We've got a fairly narrow window of money procurement spend, and we want to be able to sort of widen that out, because some people want to do small projects, and that's fine. And some people want to do really huge projects. And we did one last year where the total expenditure was more than double what we'd ever done before. And thank God we did it, because the whole forestry industry would be closed down here if we hadn't done it. It was one of those extraordinary coincidences that Forestry and Land Scotland came to us and said, our seed bank, we have we need to plant millions of trees every year, and only 1 in 3 seeds germinates. Can we figure this out? And we've got rates that are extraordinary. I mean, they're over 80%. But the real thing is, we realized during lockdown that the methodology that had been developed would allow trees to be planted without breaking social distancing rules. So we managed to plant 4 million trees where we were planning on 400,000 as a test, and suddenly somebody said 4 million. So sorry, I digress, but you know, that is a much bigger project. And so we're looking at that. We're looking at the post-accelerator phase and helping people to really grow their businesses and making them stick inside the public sector as well as elsewhere. And again, it goes back to the Silicon Valley playbook. Some of the best investment houses in Silicon Valley invest and then get stuck in with the companies to really grow them. There's an amazing investment company called Andreessen Horowitz. And they do that, and they do it really well. And we want to see if we can't adapt that bit of what they're doing out there to fit our companies, and we think we can do that. So it's expansion of activity, but it's also deepening of the activity. So we're really excited, and I think the bottom line is, unless we innovate and continue to innovate, we'll be dead, because I've got all these other people snapping at my heels. But you know, this is where people talking to each other. We're, you know, yes, of course we're in competition to a certain extent, but you know, I on a very big level, I think human civilization has progressed because there's a brilliant balance between collaboration and competition, and that could be friendly in both cases. Competition does not have to be cutthroat. And I think the very fact you've got people here talking with each other, and we have a CivTech Alliance where we're all joined up, shows that actually this idea, and I think it goes back to what Andrew said earlier, that you get SMEs in, small businesses or whoever's coming up for the solution. Yes, they want to be a successful business, but primarily they want to solve problems. They want to do tech for good. And thank God for that, because I'm probably going to get fired for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Tech has been too riddled with robber barons and people who just want to make money and who want to take your data and sell it, or people who want to cut corners or turn the entire world into gig economies. And it's time we took tech back for what it could do, and that is tech for good. That's my rant over, sorry.
Andrew, you wanted to add something?
I like Mark's rant. I guess, for us, evolution is, I think we've got the business side right. I think we've taken the challenges and we've managed to get people to work and come up with the kind of solutions that create the impact we're looking for. I think the challenge is for us bringing it back inside our bureaucracy and kind of entrenching it. And as Mark touched on, these things, you've got to scale them up to create impact. The worst thing you want is a whole bunch of wonderful novel pilots that on the face of it do all the right results, but no one's investing in and scaling to create the kind of impact that you need. And I think, the big piece for us now is when you have a bureaucracy that is risk averse, that is that only small parts are engaging in these new methodologies. I think we've really got to focus on bringing back to executives and ministers and so on why this needs to be not the only solution or the main solution, but certainly kind of a standard part of the kind of procurement arsenal when it comes to solving public problems. And I think there's a lot of work still to go on that side, because we're proving that people can come up with solutions. We're proving that they can be kind of mindful of the end users and sympathetic to what the government's looking for. But we've really got to get government to kind of just to step up a level and think about how they even begin to adopt the methodological approaches that we're demonstrating that change the way people work together, and so to start bringing some of those on board.
And Justyna, you've been kind of now increasingly expanding into that role, right? Into working on these huge changes, not just like pilots, but also like even like policy areas and that kind of things. Could you tell a bit more about how your team kind of expanded and where do you see it moving forward as well?
Maybe there are two words that are not going together, but this time I will put them together. So to run on constantly Govtech, you need to have your daily routine, and our daily routine is to looking for people in the public sector that would, and of course they can come to us and bring their challenges, but our daily routine is looking for people who wants to solve their problems, their challenges in innovative way.
A really good point has just been made is that this is hard work. There's no two ways about it. Like you say, we've been going for, we launched the first one in 2016, so 4 years, but there was a year before that. And we have now done over 50 challenges. We've worked with 35, I think it's 35 public sector organizations, which means we've got repeat business, which is good. But if you look at 35 against the number of public sector organizations we've got, and then compare it to the adoption curve, we're in the chasm. That gap between the early adopters and the early majority. You get across that, you get unstoppable momentum. We're right in the middle of that at the moment. Very rough. We are dead right in the middle of it. It's hard, and that's after 4 years. It's hard work. You're trying to change decades, if not hundreds of years of ingrained culture, but both in the public sector and the private sector. In people don't like change. People don't like innovation. I grew up with innovation because my father was a technologist. But I thought it was perfectly normal. But most people do not like change, and we're trying to change huge organisations and entire cultures, and we need to do it because otherwise, this opportunity that tech gives us will be lost forever, and that would just be too awful to contemplate, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we need to be fighters. It's like all day, all night, sometimes even during night, especially like during this. I know because I talked to Alexander that also in Scotland, okay, it's not good COVID, of course, but for our teams was something like everybody at once. Okay, so who can do that? Who can solve those digital challenges? Okay, so we do have Govtech in our government. Yeah, so let's go to them to get help, to be helped. And also I remember that I called Alexander in May. Back in May, and I said, okay, so you know, all those programmers were eager to do volunteering to help us in COVID. And I know that in Scotland you call them Tech Army. We have our Polish name for that, but at the same time, in all over the world, it turned out that our ability to build bridges between public sector and private sector was crucial because although there were bunch of the tech guys, girls, and programmers, and all startups that were very eager also for free, because it's all of us were at home, stayed at home, so everybody wanted to do something to be a part of a tackling of the problem of the COVID. With the skills they possess. So so also such skills of our teams, and it is also what Mark mentioned, that it is a hard job, of course, and it is not like, okay, we can everybody do that, because not everybody wants to build those bridges, because it is safe sometimes to not build those bridges between those two sides that are the same sides at the end of the day, because on both sides there are citizens, there are people. We are all the clients of this government. If we work at the government, we are the clients of that, because we live in these countries, and we want to also, we are very eager to help it to innovate and to be more effective and more efficient.
Thanks, Justyna. And Andrew, have you seen any change in terms of, how COVID changed also the importance or the role of the team?
I was talking to Mark before we came on the call. I think in the early stages, Australia almost had no COVID scenario. We were in a situation where we'd sort of bypassed the health scare, and there was obviously some economic issues, but then we managed to get a second wave in Victoria. And so that's presented, and that's now declining, but it's presented new kind of economic challenges. And I think, in response to that, there's a strong recognition that government procurement can play a role in post-COVID economic response, and that the kind of decision-making, the kind of rapid coordinated decision-making that's gone on during COVID is almost lending itself to a much more faster, agile way of working. Again, in a counter to that status quo of the bureaucracy delivering what it's meant to do, which is to not change, and people's sort of reluctance to change. But there's an opportune moment right now to sort of get on and to recognise that we need to do things differently. I think all of us here have probably got elements of the program that focus on kind of building that public sector capability, like so that the public servants, civil servants that are coming into the program are kind of upskilling so that when they leave engagement of our program, they're taking something back and they're kind of using those methods and techniques in their own departments and programs. So I think there's an appetite for change, and the way people come into the program and their mindset and where they are when they leave, it's just diametrically opposite to where they were. They grow so much, as do the organisations that you partner with. So I think there's a big sort of focus on the kind of things that experience that we offer to people beyond just what those technical solutions are that are coming out. It's a kind of growth process as you go through these programs. And I think many of us are trying to kind of entrench that.
Mark, would you like to expand?
Yeah, and again, I totally agree with everything that's been said. I've just seen a paper and a minister talking about what COVID did, and Lord, it's done some awful things, obviously, and I'm not talking about that side of it, but he made the point that it probably achieved 7 years of public sector reform in 7 weeks because we had to do something. I think, and certainly in terms of CivTech 5, the innovation flow we're now running, all 10 challenges have something or other to do with the post-COVID world. And I think one of the problems I've got, or one of the things I'm trying to sort of get people to realize, is that people keep talking about the new normal. Well, it's a really weird idea, and I think it's something that people like to say because they kind of want to make people feel it's okay because we're going back to normal. We're not going back. One normal requires a long history to be able to look back at it and go, that was normal. Well, we don't have a long history. We're still in the middle of this pandemic, whatever people say. We are still in the middle of the pandemic. We do not know what the future is going to be, but we can take that future by, we can grasp that future and start inventing it. So instead of talking about a new normal, I think we should be talking about inventing the future, or certainly innovating the future. And I really do feel strongly that, yes, this pandemic is awful, but we're probably going to have more of them. But it's also an opportunity to get things right, or to start shifting things hugely. I think you were all there on demo day in March, and I stood on stage and I said, I'm going to argue today, and I'm going to present you 14 teams, and I'm going to argue that digital is no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. Boy, did I not realize how much that was going to be proven in the next few months. I mean, somebody said to me inside the Scottish Government, did you know something? No, I did not. But it is an essential, and we need to get that across. And we need to get that across to some people who are very powerful, but have always done things on paper. And not in Scotland. This is working with another nation as part of CivTech. I actually had a permanent secretary, say to me, why should I change? It's always worked, my system, paper. And you're dealing with people who've gone up and up and up on an old system, and we're asking them to tear it down. And I think that's one of the big challenges for us. How do you make innovation comfortable and safe for people?
Thanks, Mark. I think I see we're approaching kind of the end of the discussion, but I think a lot of transferable things and ideas and, the first steps for people who are now starting just to create that innovation and create the future, they can definitely learn, I think, a lot from our discussion, but also, all of your teams have a lot of material online as well. So definitely people can go to and just look at the processes. And I'm sure that anyone of you would, if they contact, Justyna definitely shared even a lot of procurement papers and everything with us. So it's definitely maybe still quite small, but therefore very, very cooperative community that would definitely welcome anyone new into the team. But I think I'll just say thank you all. Thank you, Andrew, Mark, Justyna. It's been amazing talking to you today, but also up till now as well for the last year or so. So thank you.
Let's keep talking.
Pleasure.
Let's keep talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.